Hello, welcome to the Midlife Moms podcast. My name's Amelia Rhodes, and joining me today is my co-host, Brenda Yoder.
Good morning.
We're so glad you've joined us. Welcome to season 2 of the podcast. That's really hard to believe, Brenda, that we're on season 2 already.
It is, because it's gone so fast, and we're going to talk today kind of about that fast and furious life that we live as midlife moms.
So true. And I think when we started dreaming this up in the spring, we couldn't have imagined what God would do. And we're so thankful for each of you that join us. And we have this vibrant, active Facebook group that we would love to have you join. There's incredible encouragement and community coming around the podcast and this phase of life, really. It's a space for moms who are in midlife, whether you still have kids at home or you've fledged and launched them all. And so we would love to see you there. Join us. Just search for Midlife Moms Community and Podcast on Facebook, or we'll link to it in the show notes as well. But I think over 200 women have joined us new since we launched the podcast. Is that right, Brenda?
Actually, about 250. So it was a group based around my book, Fledge, Launching Your Kids Without Losing Your Mind, before that. And we had about 450 women that were in there. And so it was a great segue and a great shift from really talking more about parenting issues of the fledging stage of life to really opening it up to the fullness of moms in midlife, which is also that stage where your kids are getting ready to leave and leaving, and then the empty nest. But what I love is that here on the podcast, we're talking about more than just parenting, and we're talking about more than just focusing on letting our kids go, because we really are women outside of that. And I'm excited for some of the conversations we're going to have today and upcoming.
Yeah, me as well. And I think our group has grown to over 600 women. And so if you have not joined yet, we would love to have your voice in there and your encouragement. And it's really become a group where it's not just us sharing and the women responding, but the women encouraging each other and posting and sharing with each other. So it's a vibrant community. We'd love to have you join.
Yeah. And one thing I love is that we pray for the women. So we have a focus. Mondays are kind of a post topic. Tuesday, we share the podcast that is either new, or we share one of the recent podcast during the off season. And then Wednesday is our kind of our encouragement or a fun Wednesday with Kim Mishler, who is going to be on an upcoming episode here in this season. And then we have a parenting post. And then Friday, we also host a live prayer. So we want everyone to join, because life is busy. And as we've talked before, we don't get a chance to develop a lot of community. And we're going to kind of talk about that fullness of life, because Amelia, both of our lives have shifted quite a bit. Your life has shifted quite a bit since we started the podcast. You want to tell our listeners about that?
It really has, even since we ended season 1. So this gap between season 1 and season 2, I had a really significant life change in my career and my work life. So I had been on staff at a church for 2 years, part-time, assisting the campus where I work at. And in the interim here, I've accepted a full-time job. So I went from about 20 hours a week to 40, 45 hours a week in a job that really is just incredible. And I love, it's a great fit. It's this using of my gifts that I have just always prayed that I would be able to serve the Lord with. And I'm really incredibly humbled and grateful for the job, but it's a very different schedule. My life looks very different. It's not as much ministry work as it's not a typical 9 to 5. So some evenings and some weekends. So it's kind of 40 hours all over the place. And so that has really shifted how our family looks. But at the same time, our family is shifting in that I'm working full time. My husband is getting ready to start adjuncting a class one night a week that he's going to teach. That's new. And then both of our kids are in high school. So we just are kind of running in 4 different directions, and our family life looks very different as well.
Yeah. And I think that's so typical of the midlife, is that everything ramps up really to this heightened place of so many big things, like big milestone events. You had a senior, or you have a junior starting school this year and a freshman. And so kind of that milestone now of 2 in high school, and you're starting a new career. Life is so full. And I know for myself that just a handful of years ago, that's exactly where we were too. We have 4 kids, all 3 years apart. So I changed careers actually at 40. I went back to graduate school, and then for a 3-year program, started working then in the school, but then that shifted after a few years, and I was doing private practice plus writing and speaking full time. And then COVID shifted me back into the schools. And so I'm still on a different schedule, getting adjusted to um, a different style of life. My husband actually retired from teaching since the start of the new podcast this spring. And so he's working a different job that has different hours. So even though we're in an empty nest season, we're really learning a new normal also. But then that fullness of adult kids whose lives continue to grow and change. And let's just talk about the fullness of life. That's what we're going to talk as we start off this episode. Amelia, what do you find are some of the biggest challenges with having teens in the house and starting a new career, supporting your husband as he grows in his career? What are some of your biggest challenges?
Some of it is just logistics. We have 3 drivers and 2 cars currently, and there are nights of the calendar where I look at and I'm like, we really do need to be in 3 or 4 different places at the same time. And so it's been this give and take of, okay, you may want to do this, but you can't, or how can we shuffle rides or share responsibilities? So I think you had said, Brenda, your kids would get used to they have to be dropped off early or picked up late. So we're kind of figuring some of that out, of even just the logistics and the calendar of how we can make it all work. And one of the things that we have done over the years that now is really important is that each kid has their own Google Calendar, and they are responsible for putting things on their own calendar. And we had a kid who missed something and was kind of frustrated. And I'm like, I've been telling you, you need to put it on your calendar because your dad and I have enough going on that we can't manage your schedule as well, which I know is a life skill and something that they need going forward. And so that pain of missing something was what prompted this kid to start using the calendar and putting their own stuff on there and inviting us to it. So that's one of the things, is really just the logistics. And the other is shifting expectations of what family time looks like. We used to have dinner together every night. Well, this year we've got one kid who's got practice until 6 p.m. and another kid whose practice starts at 6 p.m. We won't have dinner probably any night of the week except for Saturday or Sunday. And so this is, a shifting expectation for me, because that was such a priority in my family growing up. And I know that my mom was all about dinner together. And I know we did that a lot, even though I was in sports and my brother was in sports, but it's really just feasibly not possible. And so last night was one of the first nights where 3 of us sat down, and my husband was like, I know I can't change it, but I don't have to like it, that one of the kids wasn't there. And it was this realization that this really is our future. Like, we're starting to see that shift of what empty nest will look like when that child graduates, when there are just 3 of us and then 2 of us. And so it's kind of this training ground of already this in-between phase of shifting expectations for what family time means. And so being intentional when we are all together, going to church together, or having a Sunday dinner together.
Yeah, I think that was one of my biggest struggles. Our life like that was hectic, and we had 2 younger kids. So like when our kids were your kids' age, like a senior and a freshman, we had a 6th grader and a 3rd grader. And so it felt like our family lost that family time around dinner really early on. And we had this revolving door. And when our boys were sent home from college during COVID, our 2 college students, we had dinner together every night for a season. And I said at one time, I was like, this was the life I always dreamed of, was really having my family around the table. But our kids were always active. They were all usually we had a 2-sport rule. So that was one way we managed our kind of family schedule, was we put a cap on all of our kids only participating in 2 sports. Some were in other activities like show choir, always youth group, things like that. But that was something that, as we have watched our kids grow, and as we've talked a little bit about our family life, even though we kind of limited, kind of like for the family, we want you to only be in 2 sports each, so that we can somehow have some type of a semblance of family life. We've had, I think, fostering those things that are important to kids is really important. And we've seen, 2 of our kids went on to be college athletes. Some of our kids found their post-high school career passions from, some of those experiences. And Amelia, I love the modeling that you just shared with everyone about giving some of the responsibilities to your kids. So something as simple as them managing their Google Calendar is
Yeah.
such a practical skill, because kids really need to know that these extra activities just aren't like playtime during the teen years. They really are about helping them develop those personal disciplines for their own life. That includes a job. It includes things that they don't want to do. It includes them managing themselves.
And that's the phase that we're at. And it's really out of necessity. And we've tried to do this all along, but truly out of necessity, there are skills that they need to be doing for themselves. And so one, currently we aren't in school yet as we're recording this. So one has an early morning practice at the high school every morning. And I'm like, you have to set your alarm, because this is early enough that your dad and I are still struggling to get out of bed as well. So you have to get yourself up. Or there've been days that he has eaten breakfast on the run because he hasn't gotten up early enough. And so just these skills of getting yourself up, planning ahead for your lunch and your snacks, packing your bag every night, like all of these things that in high school they absolutely should be doing. But sometimes, it's easier to just help them along. And so a lot of those skills, the calendaring, and then there have been times where, someone has been frustrated about something around the house. I'm like, please feel free, go ahead and clean that up, take care of it, make that meal. And so it's been good and necessary that they pick up and start doing their own things, doing their own laundry, start to finish. You need clean clothes, you wash them, you dry them, you fold them, you put them away. So, we haven't always done the best at that, but in this season, things that I'm letting go, guilt of that maybe I, grew up with, things that my mom always did, or even just shifting expectations there of what I should be doing or I'm capable of doing, and letting go of any guilt of like, oh, wow, I'm not cooking dinner. I haven't cooked dinner all week. That's okay. Like, there's food in the house. Everyone can feed themselves and make their own meals, because we don't have time when we're in the house together. And so part of that has been teaching them, giving them the skills and the tools, and walking with them through it. We didn't just throw them in the deep end. We taught them how to use the calendar, gave them an alarm clock, gave them the tools they need to help themselves be successful. And then at the same time, really letting go of that for myself, letting go of the control. They may not do it the same way I would do it. They may not do it, thoroughly. They may, have their own vision of how something should look. But in the end, like even when it comes to food, they're feeding themselves. And I've seen them take responsibility for their own nutrition. They're athletes. They're coming to their own conclusions of, if I want to feel good and perform well, this is how I need to eat, not just grab all the junk. So it's been really good and challenging, and a lot of letting go of expectations and maybe unnecessary or cultural guilt or shame that I might feel for things that I'm not doing anymore.
Yeah, I think that's the real struggle. And I think as I hear you talk, again, that was part of I think that's part of a mom's struggle, as all of a sudden her kids aren't little anymore. And so, right, so like you're always taking care of whoever's the youngest, you're always kind of doing those things for them. Then all of a sudden there's this big wake up of, oh, like they're adults almost. They're in adult bodies. They're not quite adults. And pretty soon they're going to be leaving the house. And so I think there's a tendency for us as moms to, like, it's not a matter of a right or a wrong, but it really is a matter of shifting the autonomy and the independence. So even for moms who say, I really want to do those things as much as I can for my kids until they leave for college or until they move out, that is great. I think the balance is still shifting an element of independence, autonomy, responsibility to our teens and young adults. Because what we've even had in conversations, one of my young adults has said, he just said, like, most of my friends don't know basic life skills. And this is a 22-year-old who's graduated from college. And some of those basic things, like waking up to an alarm clock and managing time and basic things of doing the laundry, grocery shopping, learning how to make basic meals. I know for myself, one of my favorite calls when I get a call from my kid, I think I've gotten them from about everyone but the one who's married, is, hey mom, I'm here at Aldi's. Help me choose between, like, what's the difference between like slow cook rice and mini rice, or
Right.
my daughter was in Mexico, but she called me, "Hey mom, how do I make mashed potatoes?" So, I think that those things really are critical. And I talk about it, the kind of a lot of the reasons why, in Fledge, about the reasons why we need to develop autonomy and independence with our kids. And it doesn't mean that we just throw them out there, but it really is about training them along the way. And I think sometimes, you talked about that guilt. I think as moms in the busy season, I think even as your kids get older and leave the house, there's this element of expectation that still we as moms have to, that nurture looks a certain way. And Amelia, you and I have talked about nurture before, because you helped me edit, or you were a beta reader for my first book, Balance, Busyness, and Not Doing It All, where I talk about a lot of these issues, but with younger families. Really, but letting go of expectations of what nurture looks like. So, for moms who struggle to say, I really don't know how to nurture well, or to be the mom I want to be when I physically am not able to take care of my kids, physical needs anymore. What does nurture look like to you then, in kind of in your current stage of life?
Yeah, nurture looks a lot less like doing things for them, but being there for them. And so it's intentional times of, when I've been gone or we've been all over the place, I still go upstairs before I go to bed and I check in with each of them. And sometimes we have just really meaningful conversations. They're short, maybe 4 or 5 minutes, but just kind of a wrap up to the day. And I know it's meant a lot, in particular to my daughter, that I check in. And so that's just one of the simple little things of being there and just, checking in and making sure they're set for the next day. And so that's been one that I have done, and being there for them. And then in that coming and going, just trying to be present whenever we do pass, being fully present, paying attention, putting my phone down when I can, and listening to them, looking them in the eyes, letting them know that we don't see each other as much as we used to. We aren't together all day, every day, like when I was a stay-at-home mom, but knowing that I'm still emotionally present for them. Physically present, spiritually present, being able to have those conversations when they have questions, and there to process. So I try whenever I can to be present in the coming and the going. So when one is getting ready to leave for a practice or coming home from a practice, and it's in those coming home moments where sometimes they're like, something happened and they need to blow off steam, or they need to process something someone said or what a coach did. So it's in those moments. We're not talking like an hour-long lengthy conversation, but it's just 10, 15 minutes and letting them blow off steam. So just being there.
Yeah. And I think, technology actually gives us a great benefit with that, because as your kids get older, and I'm thinking about some of the moms who were like me, which I was actually convicted with my younger two that I was parenting on autopilot for a while, because we had kind of been in your busy season for like a long time. And some of those parenting pieces, I'd done them twice before already. I had 2 kids in high school. And while I kind of felt I was present, I was really convicted one time. I remember realizing that they need as much active parenting as my older 2 did when they were that age. And, you can kind of get your systems in place. Like I did a lot of freezer meals. That was one of my go-tos. And in fact, I just did freezer meals even just for my husband and I, because I want to cook better. And my job at school sometimes is about a 12, 13-hour job till I get home from school. And so I think that as moms, we need to look at the ways that we can engage with our kids, even when they don't live in our home anymore. So even with kids who are in college or young adult kids, texting is also a way, it's not always, we can't always be physically present with them. But being aware of what's going on in their life. I try as a principal, either Sunday nights or Monday morning, to text all of my adult kids and my college student, how can I pray for you this week? And so I'm not able to check in with them at night anymore, just like you were just mentioning, but that's my way to let them know that they really have an open window to share with me what it is that's on their schedule for the week. And it's just nice to be able to say when you're thinking of them or you know that they're going through something, to just check in without being intrusive. And so that's a plus with technology that I'm so grateful for.
One of the things that I often will do is if they tell me something, I'll put it on my calendar. Like, hey, today is a big tryout. Today is a big test. I'll put it on my calendar just to prompt to remind myself, because there's so many things going on, to check in. So even if I'm at work, that could be a text message at lunch. Hey, how did that big test go today? So just knowing that you are remembering and paying attention. And sometimes that means truly I have to put it on my calendar, text my kids, see how this went.
Yeah. So our time's about up. Is there anything else that you think is really important? I'm excited to talk about our next topic for the next episode. We're going to be talking about kind of careers and what it looks like as midlife women who might be entering a season of new careers or something different. But let's circle back around. Has there been a funny? So we like to highlight the fun things here on the Midlife Mom podcast. Has there been something humorous that has happened as you guys have been coming and going and kind of being ships that pass in the night?
Oh goodness, I should have thought of this ahead of time. I'm sure there has been, but there've just been a couple times where someone's been stranded at home and had to be like, oops, well, I guess I can't go finish my school shopping tonight because there's not a car in the driveway. You look out the window and realize, unless I ride my bike, I'm stuck. So just there's been laughter over that. And I think just the thing that I would encourage women is just to embrace the fullness. And not to think about all the things you're missing or what was, but to really embrace where we are right now. And I think what has driven that home for me is, last year looked so different. And there are lessons that I have taken from last year that I want to put into practice now, even though the calendar is full and it looks so different than it did a year ago, to really embrace the fullness, to be grateful for it, grateful for the opportunities that everyone has to pursue the things that God designed for them, but to embrace it and not get grumbly about what we're missing or what we're not able to do.
I think that's really true because I know funny for me sometimes was we'd open up, I have a girl and then 3 boys. So our younger 2 boys, they would often say there's no food in the house, and you open the refrigerator and there's literally like only condiments, like there's pickles and mustard and ketchup. Now there would have been a lot of food in the pantry, but I'm speaking like ready-made food they can get out. But I just want to encourage too, and just reiterate that just as soon as that season of fullness just feels almost out of control, the next school year rolls around and one of your kids leaves or they become, they graduate from high school and they really are should be starting to develop those on their own skills, even if they live in the home. And so I just, that's really why I wrote Fledge, is because the season from that fullness to the empty nest is like this revolving door that we don't talk about a lot. And so I know for myself, when my 3rd one went to college is when I was really struggling with, wait a minute, I know how to do the full house, but I'm not empty nest yet. And we've got all of these dynamics going on in addition to being a midlife mom and all of the insecurities and things that we've talked about up until this point. So for anyone who hasn't read Fledge, go ahead and grab it. It's Fledge, Launching Your Kids Without Losing Your Mind. We talk about all things related to raising and releasing, but also being a midlife mom. But also get Amelia's book, Pray A to Z, because it is such a beautiful prayer guide for praying not only for your kids, but also for your community. And I think that's what I love about Pray A to Z, Amelia, is that it is short and it is powerful. A mom could sit down at the beginning of her day, or even when she gets to work, or while she's waiting in the carpool line, to just read the prompt for that day, to be able to pray for her community, and then also pray for her family too.
Something short, simple, and sweet, but meaningful in that very full season.
Yeah. So you want to wrap it up for us today?
Yeah, thank you all for joining us. Again, check out our Facebook group, Midlife Moms Community and Podcast. We'd love to see you there. And we'd love to have a conversation about this. What is the fullness in your life? How are you handling that? How do you see God working in the midst of that? We'd love to celebrate with you and encourage you along the journey of your midlife motherhood. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Bye.